Good evening. My name is Kelly Greenlee. I am the Community Outreach Librarian here at Prince Memorial Library in Cumberland, Maine. We are a bustling community library that serves the communities of Cumberland and North Yarmouth, and we are so pleased to welcome so many people from all over the state into our virtual community this evening. Before we begin, I'd like to call your attention to some housekeeping items. You'll notice that there is a Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. That icon is your vehicle to asking questions this evening. So we encourage you to ask questions throughout the course of the talk, and we may stop here and there just throughout the course of the evening to ask questions of our presenter. We do have a large number of people attending this evening, so we do hope that we can get to as many questions as possible, and please know that we will do our best to do so. Another housekeeping item, this is a 3-part series. Part 2 will be held in 2 weeks from tonight via Zoom. Part 3 will be held in person in Cumberland, Maine, and it will be recorded for those who cannot join us in person. If you tried to register for that session that is going to be in person, but were unable to do so, that means that you tried to register within the past few days. So we got a bigger response than we were anticipating, and that's good news. We have reopened the registration for Part 3 today. So it was closed because we hit our max of the number of registrants, but we have reopened it because we have changed the venue for where we are going to host that event. So if you have already registered for Part 3, excellent. I will be sending out information about the new location, which will be at the Cumberland Congregational Church, just down the road from Prince Memorial Library. And I will be sending all of that information out in the coming few days. So you will get details of that coming soon. Let's see. I think we can begin the program. As a library, we try to cast a wide net for the programs that we offer to people in our community. One of the best ways for us to do that, and one of my favorite ways to do that, is to partner with different community organizations from our area. Tonight's offering and the entire From Africa to Maine series is one example of such a partnership. It has been such a pleasure to work with and to partner with the Cumberland Congregational Church to bring you this series. They have worked tirelessly to coordinate our speakers and our panelists for each of the 3 events of the series, and they have been able to do so because of the excellent and good work that they're doing for asylum seekers in the greater Portland area. Without further ado, I would like to introduce the moderator for tonight's talk. Reverend Allison Smith is, sorry, I'm going to make it so that you can see Allison. Reverend Allison Smith is the senior minister of the Congregational Church in Cumberland, United Church of Christ. She was a co-founder of the Anti-Racism Resource Team of the Maine Conference of the United Church of Christ. She and her church have a long history of welcoming neighbors and putting love in action. Reverend Allison, I'll pass the baton to you.
Thank you, Kelly. It is wonderful to be with you. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to this session this evening. Earlier this year, as our Welcoming Neighbors team was working with so many others in our wider community around the housing crisis that so many families are facing in need of housing, I began to think about how our schools don't generally explore Central African history and how that could be helpful for us all as we seek to understand the root causes for how and why people seek asylum in Maine and the journeys people take and the sacrifices and courage that this involves, and indeed how we might build a stronger community together. And so we reached out to Kelly Greenlee, as she mentioned, and it has been an amazing and wonderful collaboration with the Prince Memorial Library, and we are so grateful for that. Tonight, we are honored to welcome our speaker, Luc Kuanzambi. Born in Kinshasa, his father is from the DRC, his mother is from Angolan descent. And he has a rich biography. And in the interest of time, I will post it on our church. We'll post it on our church website. But for now, let me just share briefly. Luc's varied career includes working for the Carter Center and as a foreign member of the Office of the South African Ambassador. He is the founder of Xenos Communications Consulting, which offers PR services in New England. And you will find that his expertise and the depth of his knowledge are incredible. And you will be glad that you have joined us this evening to hear his analysis. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Luc, our speaker this evening.
Thank you, Reverend Smith, and thank you, Kelly, and thank you, everyone, for joining us in these talks. First and foremost, I want to start by saying that I'm altogether flattered and humbled, not just by the introduction, but also by the tremendous opportunity of getting to interact with you virtually today and sharing about this momentous piece of my personal effort to try and understand why many of us are coming from Central Africa to here in Maine. And I really hope that this is going to be a very rich exchange, a very good moment of interaction. And I hope you take away from this moment a number of information that you could go and research further and reach yourself. I wanted to start by sharing the slides that will be guiding us today. And I think I'll need Kelly's help to do this appropriately. Let me just make sure I'm sharing properly. I hope you can see my slides now.
We can see them.
Thank you. Yes. So today's presentation, or best tonight's presentation, because it's 6:38 my time here, is titled Historical Underpinnings of the Influx of Asylum Seekers from Angola and the Democratic Republic of the Congo in Maine. I want to start with a little bit of background as to how I came up with this title. In 2019, I was working, actually, yes, 2018, 2019, I was working for a local company here in Maine when, like many members of the communities, I heard about the breaking news that there was an influx of new asylum seekers at the Expo Center in Portland. And surprisingly, they were all sharing one feature with me. They were all coming from either Congo and from Angola. And that was a total surprise. I also knew that they would need a sense of orientation because many of them did not come here with a lot of English. And that's one asset I had, not just English, but also some cultural understanding of the American culture, because I've had prior exposure, and also my professional journey has just shaped me into a cultural facilitator. And I decided to come and help them navigate the situation. I was graced with the favor of serving the Congolese Community Association of Maine and working inextricably with the Maine Immigrants' Rights Coalition, especially Mufalo and everybody else in the organization. And we were therefore at the forefront of the situation. But as we were dealing with this influx, one of the recurring questions I was getting from many of the American members of the American community was that, why are all these people coming here? And who are they really? Have they been vetted to get into the country? So questions, there was a lot of questions. And to me, I did not dismiss those questions as being intruding, but I regarded them as being legitimate. So in an effort to try and cater some answers based on my understanding, my personal journey, and my understanding of the reasons why people are moving from places like Central Africa and coming to Maine through the southern border, I decided to start to formulate some type of discourse to help people understand not just the historical background of events back home, but also the personal reasons leading many of them, if not many of us, because I'm an asylum seeker too, to come and seek asylum here in Maine. So swiftly, the presentation tonight will start by looking at the conceptual framework of our whole presentation. It's mostly like a path, a roadmap to the presentation. I want us to start by determining what the objectives of our presentations are going to be. I started by identifying 3 objectives. I want us to start by highlighting what I believe is the nexus of ancient, recent, and even developing events in Angola and the Congo region, with ties to the mass migratory movements from Central Africa to northern USA, the northern hemisphere, but particularly to Maine. So the second reason, the second focus will be to cast a contextual bridge to really help people understand the murky waters or the dark reasons why the legitimate, not dark reasons, but I wanted to say the legitimate interrogations that loom within the American host community when dealing with the asylum seekers, especially those from Central Africa. You know that historically, there was a lot of people coming through the southern border, but there were mostly Latin Americans. But recently, since 2019, there's been a number of Central Africans. And I really hope that this presentation helps you understand why this is a new brood of asylum seekers coming here. The third objective will be to try and shed some light on a few corollary and legacy Western foreign policies that had an impact on the functioning of the African societies. I want to start by indicating that this is not an attempt for me to try and poke any accusation onto anybody, but I just want to look at historical events and pinpoint to the fact that they had a sway in the normal functioning of the African societies that we'll be focusing on today. So the method to achieve this goal for me was as simple as just going through some documentary research. Although I know the history of my country, the Congo, and also my mother's country, Angola, I did some effort to do some digging in the books. And at the end of the day, you will see that we are sharing a number of titles with you that you could go and research for yourself and at least be in a position to verify whether the information I'm sharing with you are simple speculation, simple conjecture, or whether it's verifiable and it's been recorded in history. And the other thing I am going to do is that I'm going to tape into my personal experience in my times serving as a foreign aide to foreign governments in the Congo. As you saw, I served organizations like the Jimmy Carter Center, but I also mostly served the South African for a very long period of time. And having that exposure put me in a situation where I could better understand some of the specific iterations of the history of not just my country, but also my region. And so therefore, the technique that I'm going to use is simply that of approaching this presentation by 2 means. On the one hand, I'll share with you what I call a skimmed historical timeline for each one of the countries. So when I say timelines, it's because it's two countries that we're talking about, Congo and Angola. And on the other hand, I also want to do a longitudinal cut, like an in-depth analysis of the events, the historical events, and offer my humble take when it comes to understanding or the impact of each and every one of those events. I have set quite an ambitious goal of covering the period stretching from the 13th century, which is actually the recorded start of the history of the Kingdom of the Congo, one of the most prominent kingdoms that formed the territory of the Congo and Angola, to date. And that's a very long period of time, as you can notice. So we will not try to linger on details and cover centuries in this presentation, but we'll try to highlight a few overhangs, a few events that to me stand out as being peak moments that have helped shape not just the discourse, but also the behavior of government and society in places like Congo and Angola. So today's presentation has a specific scope. In today's scope, I really want to focus on the fact that we want to linger on history and not look very closely at political implications of history. The reason why I want to do that is that although I know it will be good to offer my personal take, but I just want to give exposure to historical events that you could go and research for yourself and draw your own conclusions. So I will not really linger on the political elements that are that have vectored or factored into these developments, although I can highlight them. So I'll not be here in a controversy or in a polemic situation. And on the other hand, I understand that I read on the social media, some of my friends were sharing about the fact that I'll be talking about how people seek asylum in Maine. That's not a piece I will be personally covering today, but the later presentations will have people who are more qualified than me to try and guide through that process. So at least we want to agree on that scope, conceptual framework. So if you ask yourself, why did we choose to focus on Angola and the Democratic Republic of the Congo? I have two main reasons. First of all, since 2019, and I believe you can verify this information with organizations like the MIRC and others who are working closely with asylum seekers, most of the asylum seekers arriving from Central Africa to Maine are mostly coming from Angola, but Angola and Congo. But I want to emphasize the fact that these are not the only two nations sending asylum seekers here. As a matter of fact, in my interactions when serving alongside other organizations, I had the privilege of meeting people from Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, from Ghana, from Rwanda, from Burundi, from places like Gabon, and Congo Republic, the Republic of Congo, the other Congo. That's one thing we'll also discover across the river from Congo Kinshasa. It's known as Congo Brazzaville, and many other locations. So asylum seekers are coming from everywhere, but these are some of the greatest providers of asylum seekers to the state of Maine. I'm sorry. And that's the reason why we want to focus on them. I also want to highlight at this stage that this migratory movement from Central Africa to the Northern Hemisphere and the Western Hemisphere is not just happening on targeting places like Maine. It's been happening for a number of years, even before 2019, when we had this big influx here in Maine, in places like Italy. For example, the island of Lampedusa has become quite a destination for Central African migrants who are living in countries like Congo and Cameroon and many other places, Mali, and going through the Sahara desert and going through Libya, sometimes dying along the path. But those who manage to make it to the seaside to the Mediterranean seaside and board some makeshift embarkation, end up either in the Lampedusa island in Italy or simply dying in the waters. And this is heavily documented, especially by European media outlets. And I wanted to include a disclaimer here. I'm sorry, just to make sure that I clarify that any of the illustrations in this presentation is not in my possession. I don't own any of the illustrations and images, but I've gotten them from sources like purchasing from image databases, or I've used images that are public domains, just to be clear in terms of that. So after that conceptual presentation of conceptual framework, I want us to start dealing with the live bullet now. Let's talk about the historical timelines. In these historical timelines, I want you to understand that I'll be covering two current nations which are separate, but which at inception started as one single nation. We're talking about the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Angola. I want to start with the Democratic Republic of the Congo because that's where we'll have a bounty of information, and a tidbit of the Angolan part will come next. But the reason why I start with the Congo is because this story of the Congo is the twin story of Angola. Everything in this country, not really everything, but the recorded history of the Congo almost starts with the discovery of a kingdom in the western part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and in the northern part of Angola that was known as the Congo Kingdom. And this is the pre-colonial period. The Congo Kingdom was formed around the 1300s. I don't have the specific date, but the mythical character that helped, when I say mythical, it's because I'm trying to refer to the seminal myths, like the foundational myths of the creation of the Congo Kingdom. The one character that was known as being the founder of the Congo Kingdom was known as Nimi Alukeni. And this is in my tribal language. And Nimi Alukeni literally just means the silversmith, in a sense. So there could be a correlation between this man's skill set and him achieving a position of leadership within those populations back then. It might have been the local silversmith, and therefore was promoted to the position of king. Many records also indicates that this kingdom was born from the ashes of a pre-existing kingdom, a prior kingdom, this young king helped pull together different tribes that did not historically belong together and helped them form some type of organization or nation and build a national identity. Now, the land surface of the Congo Kingdom, as I said, covered territories like the western part of the southwestern part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the northern part of Angola, a good swath, if not the whole territory of the Republic of Congo-Brazzaville, and also part of the southern part of the Republic of Gabon. So this was quite a massive swath of land. And unfortunately, there's not much that's known about Congo, the Kingdom of Congo's history from the indigenous people, except for the records provided by European explorers who came to the shores of the Congo Kingdom in the 1400s, 1500s. So when you start digging into the history of the Kingdom of Congo, you'll start to notice that a lot of times people trace not the origin of the country, but the history of the country around 1482, with the arrival of a European explorer, a Portuguese explorer named Diogo Cam, also known as Diogo Cao. He arrived at the mouth of the Congo River. Now, if I may allow myself, we've been educated in elementary and high schools back home in the Congo to think that this man was the one who discovered the mouth of the Congo. But you just need to be aware of the fact that the mouth of the Congo was actually, the Congo River was populated by indigenous population. So they already knew about it. He discovered them, he discovered their existence, but things did not start with him. Now, this man came not as a military conquistador like a victor, but he came as one who came to establish trade and diplomatic relationships between the Kingdom of Portugal that he was representing and the Kingdom of Congo. One important element to highlight at this level is that he was surprised to find out that, because they had dark ideas about Africans back then, that this was a very well-structured kingdom. It had a king, it had a council of wise, you could call them the ministers of the king, and it had a capital city, Banza, Congo. It also had provinces, 12 provinces. It had colleges, what you could call colleges today, but those were initiatic schools to which not anyone could get access. You had to have a specific profile, like, if I may use modern terminology, you had to meet the requirements for being accepted or enrolled in the particular program. And there were elite programs that were preparing people in positions of leadership, but there were also programs that were just available as part of the rite of passage for people to move from one stage of their life to the other stage of life. So there was a lot of organization and clear evidence of a civilization in the Congo. Besides that, at the cultural level, the Congo enjoyed a sense of understanding of the transcendent. Congolese believed, and they had a faith, not just in the existence of God, Nzambi Mpungu or Nzambi Wampungu, which literally just translates into God maker or the transcending God, but they also believed as a sideline to the ancestors, because they did not believe that life ended with death. They believed that every time that someone passed away and died, they transitioned into a new kingdom, sometimes in Congo called Kayengele. The word Kayengele actually entails the notion of happiness. Literally, they've transitioned into happiness. Another way to just say heaven, but they did not think of heaven as being that remote extraterrestrial location, but they thought of it as a village apart that they could just not reach physically, but they had bridges like Nganga Nzambi or Nganga Nkisi, meaning witch doctor, or if you may, the traditional witch doctor or whoever is initiated to be the bridge between the realm of the spirit and the world, to serve as a bridge. So the reason why I'm highlighting this is because down the road, you will understand that with the interaction with the Western guests, the Western visitors in the communities, there's been a lot of loss, cultural loss. There's been a sense of not just expropriation of history, because if you start looking at the titles and the names of the people are writing the history about the history of the Congo, you'll find that there's just a handful of local and indigenous authors. It is mostly Western authors. I'm not saying this is bad, it's good because it gives us a record, but the problem is it offers us mostly an outsider's view, not an insider's view. So the situation is so bad as that many of us who are from Congo descent do not have a recollection of who we really were before we encountered the Europeans. All we know about that encounter is what has been told to us through European writings. And that has caused the country to suffer a major loss, not the country, but all these nations to suffer a major loss in terms of a sense of identity. The other thing that also happened is that there's been expropriation and confiscation of cultural identity, because many of the crafts or artwork that were developed and that formed part of the identity of the local population were stripped from the local population either by force or by wiles. When I say by force, it's because colonialism came and took away massive amounts of artwork and took it to the West. And what's the connection between that and people coming here? You will quickly notice that these are people who have been stripped from a sense of identity, personal identity, and most of the things that people know about them is what they've been taught to believe about themselves. And that's a very important element to retain at this stage. I will not linger much on how the Congo Kingdom collapsed, but it's easy to understand that the interaction with the West culminated into events where there was a change in the political system, because traditionally the power dynamic within the Congo Kingdom was not a matter of a dynasty. It was not power transmitted from father to son, but it was mostly a system where the king was more of an elected representative of all the people. He was the champion of a specific tribe or ethnic group, and elevated at the level after meeting the requirements set by the Council of Wise. And he throned on top of the Council of Wise, and the Council of Wise was also replaceable. It was I could call a proto-democracy system, and it's very interesting to look into if you start digging deeper into that. We won't linger on that, and we'll move to the next section. So one important element on this illustration is Queen Nzinga of the Congo people. Queen Nzinga is literally the Jeanne d'Arc. I don't know what's the word in English. Is it Jane of Arc? Yes, Jane of Arc. She will be like the Jane of Arc of the Congo people. And this was a woman who achieved the top position of leadership in one of the provinces. She was the queen of one of the Congo provinces. So leadership was not restricted to people based on gender, and there was a sense of inclusion at that level. It's just one element I wanted to highlight. Now the kingdom collapsed, mostly following slave trade by Western. Well, I'm trying to find a polite word, but Western guests into the communities who get involved into the trade of slaves. It is true that in the earliest part of the interaction between the Congo Kingdom and the Kingdom of Portugal, the king of the Congo sent some slaves to Portugal and to some other parts outside of the Congolese territory as a sign of a present. But the slaves, I mean, I will not linger into details because there's quite a controversy around that, because some people use that as a justification for slavery, saying that people came, African Americans who are of Congo descent came here because they were sold by their people and sold by the king mostly. But apparently there was a very different understanding of the concept slavery in the Congo Kingdom. And the slaves were mostly not people who I'm sorry, people who belonged to that specific tribe, but there were people from other tribes who were vanquished in battles. And as you know, I won't justify slavery, but humanity has known episodes of slavery, and sometimes people were made slave after combats, after having been overcome. Now, he sent slaves, symbolic amounts of slaves to the West, but then the Western powers took advantage of it and started doing some rafts into Congo's territory and managed over a period of almost 3 centuries to remove about 5 million individuals from the Congo Kingdom. And that weakened the population, the size of the population, and caused the country to collapse. The military strength of the country was weakened, and some of the people who were sent into slavery in the West happened to be members of the royal family. There is a very remarkable episode where the king of the Congo sends a letter complaining to his counterpart in Portugal, and he's writing as if pleading with a brother. But the response from the Portuguese king is mostly a mockery, trying to tell him that actually you're saying that you're losing your population because of slave traders who are taking people from your kingdom to my kingdom. But my Portuguese people who are in the Congo are telling me there's more slaves to be taken. It's as if we have done absolutely nothing. That's just one episode. So this country was systemically and systematically weakened, and the country, the kingdom collapsed, not just the kingdom of the Congo, but many African kingdoms collapsed with the following events. 1884, the Berlin Conference, which was convened between the European superpowers at the time, who decided to slice Africa as if a piece of steak. So I won't stay long on the Berlin Conference because it's known by a lot of people, but the most remarkable event here is that these are people deciding about the surface and the structure of territories in Africa in total absence of Africans and their traditional leadership, in total disregard of the existing leadership and the structure of ethnical and tribal identity. So this is the reason why today you'll find on one side of the artificial frontier or border established by the Berlin Conference, members of the same family identifying as, let's say, Congolese, and on the other side of the border, you have people from the same bloodline who are identifying as Zambians or as Angolans or as people from Gabon or people from Central African Republic. Now, what this does, it does not eliminate the conscience and the awareness of the fact that all these people belong together, but it weakens the bonds. I oftentimes regard my cousins from the Angolan side as foreigners because they speak Portuguese and they have undergone all the political and social events in Angola, a different territory. I've never been there. I've never spoken Portuguese. I mean, I have a couple of words, just survival words. And I feel like a very different individual compared to them. So you see, the work that was done in the first place to weaken the sense of identity has been even deepened at the stage by segregating people who actually belong to the same body, the same cluster, the same tribe, the same ethnic group. And that weakening has impacted on the sense of personal identity and national identity by the same blow. As you will see down the road, this has a sway on political events because sometimes conflicts can stem from these very lines, from the cracks of this divide. You will notice, for example, that because someone like me is born of a mother who initially was an Angolan before she became Congolese about 5 years before I was born, it is almost impossible, it is made impossible for me to achieve some positions in the Congo. So segregation in my own society. Right now, one of the topical issues at the parliament in the Congo is that there should be a special nationality law to be passed to prevent anyone who has, let's say, an ounce of blood, which is not utterly Congolese, to become a political leader, or not a political leader, but to achieve the status of a head of state. And this is having a major sway on some of the potential candidates for the 2023 elections in the Congo. So trouble is brewing on these identity lines already. And every time there's election in the Congo, not just in the Congo, but also in the region, election means trouble. I know there's a lot of excitement even in America when it comes to elections, and there's a lot of vitriol that gets traded. But in the case of the societies, these are conflict-smitten societies and post-conflict societies, and sometimes it just takes the one spark of tribe ethnocentrism in order to get chaos, to see things devolve into, let's say, what you could call a civil war. So I wanted to highlight that because these things really have an impact on national stability right now. Now,
Luc, can I interrupt you for a moment? This
yes,
is Allison.
Please do, yes.
Yes, so I just wanted to let you know, as we talked about at 7:10, and remind our audience that if you have a question, you can type it into the chat. But just a reminder of the time for us as we move through independence and the present day.
Yes. So thank you, Reverend. So in thrifty words, Congo became a colony after 1884. Congo became a colony of Belgium, and Angola became a colony of Portugal. Now, these colonies were places of exploitation, of extortion. These were territories run by traditional chiefs, and they had fiefdoms, as I said previously. But you see a new dispensation with Western leaders not being present physically on the side, but sending their minions and deciding to harness the resources of this territory. And they don't do it just by sending people who are militarily and technologically superior, but they also do it by brutalizing the local population. If you were to dig into the story of King Leopold and read a book like the Ghost of King Leopold's Ghost, you will get a lot of gory details about how much impact he has had on the Congo. He conducted actually one of the earliest genocides in the history of the Congolese people. And so after King Leopold, he handed over the territory because of international outcry following the massacres and sometimes the the amputations that he had orchestrated on Congolese territory in order to harness natural resources that will make his personal wealth, not Belgium's wealth, but his personal wealth. He was forced, just for sake of saving the day, saving his appearance, to hand over the territory to the Kingdom of Belgium. But if you look at the deed of transfer from King Leopold to the Belgians, you will see that he was handing over his personal belongings. The territory and the people were his personal belongings. In just a little less than 5 pages, he indicated that he owned not just the land and the underground of the Congo, he also owned the people. And he gave it as a present to Belgium for them to carry on the enterprise of exploiting the Congolese. Now, with this happening, if you look at elements in the culture that have been impacted by this transfer of power, the word government in many Congolese languages, including Lingala and Kikongo, is Bula Matari or Bula Matadi. Bula Matari is actually a phrase which simply means to strike the stone or to break the stone. The reason why the government was associated to this image, it's because King Leopold had hired an American Scottish mercenary who named Livingston, actually not Livingston, Henry Morton Stanley. And Henry Morton Stanley dominated the local population and forced them to build the railroad that will help the transfer of goods that were harnessed from the inner lands of the Congo to the coastlines of the Congo, and then bring all the natural resources to Europe. Now, because he was forcing them to build those roads and to strike the stones, and many people died out of it, the government has come to be identified as Bula Matadi, like strike the stones. It's still used today in local languages, so it has permeated into the local culture. And that's the gentleman I was talking about, Henry Morton Stanley. Now, one way these people had dominance on the local population is because they formed a military organization that was subservient to the interest of the West. And these were, commanded by Western officers, but the troops, the lower levels of the troops, were people from local descent. And in this illustration, you'll see the contribution of the Congo and a footprint of the Congo in the Second World War. This is the illustration of German troops surrendering to Congolese troops somewhere in Ethiopia because they participated to those battles. Now, what the Congolese have learned from the Belgian leadership style is brutality. So government means being brutal. Government means lording it on the rest of people who don't have power. And during the Second World War, around 1944, 1945, the Belgian colonizers gave access to the ore of uranium located in the village of Shinkolobwe in Katanga to the American defense program that was known as the Manhattan Project. That was what led to the first atomic bomb that was used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and it's heavily documented. So Congo sort of helped America achieve the status of superpower unintentionally, because they never handed the ore personally, but it was the Belgians that gave it to the Americans and they developed the bomb. Now, came a moment when movements of protests surfaced throughout the territory of the Congo, and the local population started demanding for independence. It did not happen overnight. The reason why there was this demand for independence from the Belgians is because there was a new brood of Congolese that surfaced that were people educated by Western colonizers who had access to information and who knew about some type of human rights, and they started demanding for those rights to be implemented, not just on themselves, but also on the rest of the population. Now, this class of individuals was a class per se. They were known as the évolués, literally the evolved, which is an insult, meaning everybody else is not evolved. The Western colonizers were the top layer of humanity, and they managed to somehow evolve from the lower strata of humanity. So they were not the rest of the population, they were the evolved. And this situation has also left some vestiges in how the country functions today. Even today, Congo still functions with a class of elite that seems to be privileged, and yet that feels inferior to the white or to the Westerners. And that creates the infantilization of Congolese leadership. A lot of times, Congolese leaders do not have a leverage before Western powers. It is almost believed today that in order for you to achieve power in the Congo, you have to get some type of endorsement from the West. And that is leaving the society with a poor sense of identity and a poor sense of self-determination. Now, I will really skip a lot of this information, but the prime minister, Congo emerged from colonialism independent, and they appointed a gentleman named Patrice Lumumba, you saw in the previous picture, as prime minister, but his rule was short-lived because he became targeted by smear campaigns from the West, and was presented to the rest of the world as being an ally of the USSR and therefore a communist. And it was just a matter of time before he was assassinated. This is a picture of Patrice Lumumba days before he was assassinated. And to date, Prime Minister Lumumba's body has never been recovered. Last year, Congo conducted a burial ceremony for one single recovered tooth of Patrice Emery Lumumba. So they never recovered the body because it was diluted into some acid. And there's a lot of documents talking about that, including video testimonies from former operatives from Western government. I won't say who. Now, Lumumba was almost immediately replaced by a totalitarian government. I will not say everything was rosy with Lumumba, because within the short period of time when he ran the government, he did make a few mistakes, including squatting some revolts in some parts of the country. Because remember, before colonialism, these populations did not belong together. And in the effort of claiming independence, some of the local population were trying to achieve back the status of being the kingdom or the chiefdom that they were back in the day. They did not want to be under the leadership of a new king, be it a black or local one. So Lumumba tried to quell rebellions by force, and he gained in the process a lot of local enemies. And this is part of the masquerade, the makeup of how they presented his death to the rest of the world. They claimed that he had been assassinated by people who were trying to avenge the death of members of their tribes that he had assassinated using public force or using the government defense forces. Now, he was replaced by a longtime ruler who was one of his proteges in the first place, President Mobutu Sese Seko. And Mobutu was started by being someone stemming from the public defense forces, from the government defense forces, and he became a subservient of Belgian interest, and he was a spy for the Belgians when serving Lumumba. He managed to gain the trust and the confidence of Lumumba and achieved positions of leadership until finally in 1960, months before Lumumba died, or actually weeks before Lumumba died, he made the first coup in the Congo instilled by Western powers. He was groomed by what the documents show. It was groomed by the CIA and the intelligence services from Belgium. Now, Mobutu will long shape the history of the Congo. As a ruler, he stayed in office for about 32 years. And in his long rule, Mobutu did some good and some bad things. The good things is that he managed to understand that he needed to develop a national identity, weaving together tribes and ethnic groups which naturally did not belong together. And he managed to do that by political wiles and also by fostering marriages, inter-ethnical and inter-tribal marriages. And today, I'll give you an example from my own household. It has become commonplace for people from the north to marry people from the south, and people from the south to marry people from the west in the Congo, people who traditionally did not belong together. My wife is partly from the north, and I am fully from the southwest, and yet we married. And my kids are neither from the north nor from the southwest. They are just Congolese. It is something beautiful. I may say that's a silver lining from this chaos. But there's been a lot of bad things that happened, because as a frame of reference in terms of leadership, all he knew was abuse of power. He used public force not just to quell rebellions, but also to muzzle or any type of opposition. As a matter of fact, in the 1970s, he started reshaping the country to his own image. He renamed the country, which achieved the status of independence as Democratic Republic of the Congo. He renamed it Zaire. And some of you will remember the 1974 rumble in the jungle between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. It was sponsored by Mobutu, and he wanted to highlight the brand of his country, and he hosted that American combat in the Congo. And therefore Zaire became a public name around the world. Now, what Mobutu's rule is mostly featured by, it's totalitarianism, brutality, a lot of murders, assassinations, muzzling of the media, but also economic slump, economic chaos. Mobutu built a number of major infrastructures in the country thanks to public debt. He borrowed money from the Bretton Woods institutions, the IMF and the World Bank. Now, these public debts came at a high rate because he had to pay back exponentially higher amount as opposed to what he had borrowed in the first place. And this debt had crippled the country for decades, and it had not just pauperized the country, but really pauperized the lowest layers of the population. Mobutu's rule was featured by corruption and brutality, in short. He had some resistance from people who had collaborated with him back in the day, people like Etienne Tshisekedi, who became a mythical figure. Now, I'll quickly skim through the surface and go through events like Mobutu was replaced by someone who was aided by a regional alliance of countries like Rwanda and Uganda, who provided him with weaponry, and those weapons they personally got from the West. Western powers helped remove Mobutu from office and replace him with Laurent Kabila. Laurent Kabila ended up assassinated in his office, presidential office, in 2001 and replaced by his son, Joseph Kabila. Joseph Kabila was endorsed by a number of Western leaders, but also groomed by a number of African leaders, including Kagame and also South Africans. But the problem is the rule of Kabila had been featured by the very same mistakes than Mobutu, brutality. So many of the people you are seeing arriving in Maine here have come to file for asylum, trying to shelter themselves from the government of Kabila. Because as you will see, there's been a lot of episodes, not just of unrest in parts of the country, but also notorious notorious assassinations of civil rights activists. This is Floribert Chebeya, who was assassinated in relation to him trying to divulge to the ICC the massacre that was carried out in the province of Congo, or Congo Central, on the followers of this charismatic religious and political leader who was trying to restore, aka the Kingdom of Congo. And these people were just swatted and just massacred by troops sent by Kabila. So to silence him and to prevent him from disclosing that to the ICC, he was assassinated. This is a case that's still under review. And I really want to bring attention to this fact. These are the pictures of Michael Sharp, an American national, and Zaida Catalan, I believe a Swedish national. They were both UN envoys in the Congo, and they never made it back to the New York City because they were assassinated. And this is a case that this is still a cold case that's being investigated. It happened under President Kabila. They were assassinated because they were investigating evidence of power abuse and massacre on populations in the Kasai province. Now, every time there's election in the Congo, the elections are more of a make-believe situation because everyone who really has control on the army has a final say on the outcome of the elections. I know America has struggled with elections recently, but that's a problem we've had for long. First of all, there's been only 3 elections so far in the Congo in 2006, 2011, and then 2018. But every time there are elections, there's a lot of unrest and there's a lot of killings that take place. Because of time constraint, I won't really linger on that. And Kabila has been accused, and him and his family, of corruption. One big and important thing is that he signed an investment deal with China in 2008 for the Chinese to invest about $6 billion worth of infrastructure in the Congo, because the Congo hasn't known any infrastructure investment in almost 3 to 4 decades under Mobutu because of corruption and everything. But the Congolese crisis was engineered. Now, the reason they signed this deal with China, it's because the terms for achieving public aid, not public aid, international aid in the West were very lofty, and they were maintaining the country in poverty and the infrastructure in chaos. Finally, when this deal was signed, China pumped billions of dollars into Congo, and in exchange, they were taking away natural resources, especially strategic mineral resources in regions like Katanga and the Kivu. And recent investigations have discovered that there are sorts of territory in the Congo where the Congolese government has absolutely zero access because it is controlled by private Chinese organizations. And this is a problem. That's part of the chaos in the Congo. And these minerals we're talking about right now are sometimes harnessed by kids underage, people who should not be working and who work in treacherous conditions and who sometimes die in landslides in those territories like Kivu and Katanga. So Kabila was accused of corruption and human rights abuses. And there's been a number of unrests, historical unrests, and the most notorious one is some type of rebellion and invasion from the Rwandans and rebellion from local populations that are associated with the Rwandans. And it's been going on for the past 27 years. I wish I could really go into details into episodes of how it happened, but it is just maintaining the country on its knees. There is a strong presence, even maybe the strongest presence of UN troops in the Congo, but these troops are more of what the local call military tourism, because they're not doing their job. They're heavily equipped, they have advanced technology, but they're not protecting civilian populations. And week after week after week, Congo knows massacres. There are issues with child soldiers in the Congo that are persistent. And one particular region of the Congo was known as the rape capital in the world, because rape was turned as a weapon of war. And these are accusations that were leveled not just against invaders like the Rwandan army on the local population, but also the Congolese troops on their local population. The women have borne the brunt of this war and conflict in Eastern Congo. All these things have a sway in the walk of the country. I won't linger on many gory details given the time restriction, but to wrap it up pretty quickly, Congo and Angola, we won't really cover Angola because of time now, but Congo and Angola have similar histories of colonization and chaotic independence, protracted wars, and an ongoing situation of conflict and political instability, lots of accusations of corruption and sometimes evidence of corruption, because the elite who have replaced the Belgians right now, the Belgian and the Portuguese, are living la vida loca, a crazy lifestyle at the expense of the government. They're living subsidized folie de grandeur, as we call it in French. And the local population is just squashed. Now, one important fact is that besides all these landscape of chaos, the poverty that has permeated all these societies has caused a lot of gang movements to develop, just like what you're seeing in places like Haiti today. So these gangs are proliferating throughout the place. I was talking to a friend who visited with me the other day and told me that there is no safe harbor right now in Kinshasa, the capital city. Every single municipality has a gang, and these gangs are sometimes butchering people. A few days ago, I saw pictures of children in an orphanage, underage, who were invaded in the middle of the night by intruders, and they were just killed for no reason, and these are poor kids. So everywhere, people, the local population has a sense of being overwhelmed by chaos, by a total lack of control by the government. I won't even talk about how President Kabila did a handover of power with President Tshisekedi. It is more of a Houdini move. I mean, I won't linger on it, but the truth is, there's a lot of distrust in the political institutions, and there is a lot of sense of abuse from the people in leadership over the local population, and even people who are stemming from the opposition are perpetrating the very same things that we're criticizing the forerunners for. As a matter of fact, as we're talking right now, President Tshisekedi has prisoners, political prisoners, who are stemming from his own political party. People who were his allies and took him to office who are now sitting in prison. Why? Because, a difference in opinion is not allowed. Opinion can cost you your liberty and sometimes your life. So those are, in a nutshell, many of the events that are impacting on the well-being of a lot of people. And the people that you're seeing through, especially through the southern border, are the most desperate of us. They left the country a while ago, and they have become Angolan citizens, and that gave them the possibility to achieve an easy access to Brazil because of relations between Angola and Brazil. And from Brazil, they travel up north to the southern border through the treacherous journey that you now know. In a nutshell, those are some surface elements I wanted to highlight to just indicate that there's so much you could see if you were to read not just the news coverage of all the developments in the region, but also to hear the stories of the people who are coming here about why they're feeling desperate, why they're feeling in danger, and why at a personal scale some of them have been in danger. That's pretty much what I could say tonight. Thank you.
Luc, we are so grateful for your depth, and I wish we had hours and hours. I wish we had a whole year where we could learn from you. Thank you so much for trying to help us see the swath of the history, and also and just glimpses. And so we have several questions here. One is, here in this context of historic colonialism that is still has its impact nowadays, the question is, I wonder what, as Westerners, we can do to help restore the trust among citizens from Congo, Angola.
I believe this is the start of a long journey of not just understanding the issues, but also becoming, exerting some sort of leverage. One way I believe that your society could help our society, it's by not just gaining full awareness of the stakes on the ground, but also lobbying your lawmakers and your decision makers in order for them to try and implement foreign policies that are conducive to better conditions in places like the Congo and Angola. Because you need to understand that the protracted war in Eastern Congo has been engineered by some Western masterminds for a number of reasons. Part of it was to try and establish a new dispensation of power, removing President Mobutu from power and replacing him by someone who was more prone to do the bidding of the West. Of course, he has done it for almost 32 years, but the Clinton administration, I'm sorry to point it out, but the Clinton administration helped remove Mobutu and helped dismantle the Congolese defense forces. These troops were trained in special territories like Chad, where they fought against the Libyans. They were trained in Israel. They were trained abroad. They came from some of the elite military schools around the world. Some of the top commanders, but unfortunately, they were just dismantled by a handful of rebels, backed by the Rwandans and the Ugandans. Why did that happen? It's not because Rwanda and Uganda had a better strategy. It's simply because they were backed by the West. So there is a lot of meddling of the West into the developments back home. And a lot of times people or stakeholders wants to dismiss it as being, a wishful thinking from the Africans. But there is a rising number of African thinkers who really regard these events from the killings of Tutsi populations in Rwanda, because you cannot dissociate the chaos in the Congo from the ethnic cleansing of the Tutsi population in Rwanda to today's events. It's also very important to understand when approaching these issues that in those regions, victims can become victimizers. Extremely important. Because it is not a rigid, a solid, a permanent role to be a victim. Victims can find themselves in a position of power and exert that power over new victims who might have been victimized themselves in the first place. Pope Francis visited the Congo very recently, and he was very adamant about the intrusion of Western powers in the Congo. And he called out the killings, the protracted killings in Eastern Congo, and he used a term that has been denied to the Congo. He said what has been ongoing in the Congo, in Eastern Congo mostly, is a genocide. So this is an uncalled genocide. One way to start would be to promote the idea of looking closely at these killings. We're talking about mega deaths, millions and millions of people, and there's no number, just as there's no general census in the Congo or census of the population in the Congo since decades. The same way, there is no shrine for the dead, and there is no accounted number of the dead, but we just know that people have been butchered either directly or indirectly. Situations like using rape as a weapon of war, young soldiers, sometimes HIV/AIDS positive, it was proved down the road because some of the women came out of the rape positive, testing positive to HIV, and some of the victims of rapes were in their 70s. Old people, senior citizens, raped. Why? Because they were powerless. So it is very complex. I don't think one can single out the problem in the Congo and Angola, but it's a concerto of a number of factors, but the West has a sway on it. And we've seen moments in the history, political history of the United States, when some lawmakers showed a clear understanding of the stakes in the Congo, but some of them ended up removed from office. I saw, for example, a Democratic representative from New York who was very knowledgeable about the situation in the Congo and very vocal. But ever since he was removed from office by the elections, no one has been advocating the Congo as good as he did. And it dies with him in a sense. So by raising awareness about issues like this, what I really want to demand here is that you don't pick side. You should not be cherry picking between Rwanda and Congo. That's not the way it is, because these needs to be said, this is a war between brothers. brothers and brothers are fighting because some of the brothers have become the subsidiaries of people who have a stake in the Congo. And these are subsidiaries of not necessarily government organizations, but they could be private organizations that are making money. Think about it, though. The cell phone you have on your table right now has some coltan from Eastern Congo, mined by those underage kids and in chaotic conditions. And that coltan arrives to you by crossing the border to Rwanda, sold at a cheap rate, sold for a song, and finally gets to be sold at an international market rate when exported from Rwanda. So, I mean, it's not a game of blaming people here and accusing, but it really demands to be looked at closely. But conversations like this could trigger change, could even slow down the sense of desperation that people are feeling when they're running away from their country right now.
Thank you, Luc. We have just maybe time for 2 more questions, and we have several questions about why Maine? It's so cold. What is the appeal of Maine for people who are coming?
I will say there are humane policies here. Some of my friends have called them, actually some of my American friends have called them lenient policies. But, you know, Congolese and Angolans arriving here are not political experts in American politics. All they're seeing are signs of humanity. It is your kindness. It is your sense of welcome, your sense of sort of invitation, especially in 2019 when the mayor of Portland extended the invitation that threw a life vest to those who were swamped in a sea of desperation. So the reason why they're coming here, it's because they feel like they're being treated the way even their government is not treating them. Now, some people will claim that people are coming here for handouts. It's not true. They're coming here for a sense of identity and security. Maine has a path for humanity. I'll be honest with you, for humanity, for a lot of these people. Remember, I told you from their societies, stratified societies, fruition of colonialism, they have been taught to think lesser about themselves. But here they can achieve the kind of future that was not even thinkable, imaginable for them back home in the Congo. It is not just economically, it's humanly. It's really hard to put it into words. What your kindness has extended to people is a chance to recover a sense of identity. Think about it. I'm here, I'm freely talking about these things and pointing out people who are in a position of power. In the Congo, I'll be dead. It's only possible in Maine. So part of why we're coming here is because we're being beautified, we're being elevated, we're being revalued, raised to the level of our humanity by gaining basic access to rights, by seeking protection from a government that could dispose of you in a way or in another, not necessarily because you have a beef with the president or you did not vote for the president, but because people who are affiliated to the government are looking at you as a threat because you think otherwise, and also because we see possibility, and we cannot deny it, for economic integration for us here, which was not even possible. I mean, I was a junior executive in the Congo. The money I was making is a joke as opposed to what I've done with entry-level jobs here in Maine. It cannot be denied. It is one piece of the attraction, but it is not the only piece of the attraction. So reducing our coming here to economical matters is an oversimplification of a very complex situation.
Thank you. And there's so many wonderful questions. I'm so sorry that we can't get to all of them, but I did one question asked early was about how climate change is affecting the Congo and whether it's a factor in the exodus.
Well, climate change Not quite, I'll be honest, because everywhere people are adapting. But speaking of climate change, I think it is important to understand that Congo is a key stakeholder in the future of humanity, because part of why we're breathing properly here in Maine, it's because Congo has not managed to destroy all the trees in the equator belt up in northern Congo. So it's very important to understand that this is a strategic country, especially the Congo, in terms of climatic transition. For us to achieve the COP objectives, Congo is a key stakeholder, not just with the preservation of the green surfaces, but also with the mining of resources that are contributing into green technologies of the future. Part of the electric cars that you're riding here, if you have a Tesla, might happen to have some copper from Katanga in the Congo. So part of the technologies that are taking us out to the space right now are using the coltan that could be mined in Eastern Congo. So there is no sustainable future without including the Congo. The problem is the stakes are so high. The Congolese government and the Congolese people are not just infantilized, but also pauperized because they're stripped from these resources. Part of the reason why these ongoing wars and unrest are taking place in Eastern Congo, it's to allow for a cheaper access to the natural resources. Unfortunately, it is a war brother versus brother. I'll tell you something. We have a lot of Rwandan friends. We have a lot of Burundian friends. We can see the humanity in them transcending the sound beats of news clips. We really see it, and we see what we have in common with them. Not just with them, but even with the people who are empowering them. On the one side, you have trained defense forces from Rwanda, trained by the West, funded by the West, equipped by the West. On the other side, you have the obsolete Congolese defense forces using weaponry from World War II, like relics from the past, and prevented from purchasing new weapons or even getting access to some type of strategies or ways of organizing defense. Now, it's a very complex situation, but the truth is, climate change has a sway on each and every one of us, because not just the weather is getting extremely hot, even in places like Kinshasa, I hear reports about that, and we see floods even in places where it did not belong. But it's very important for the West to really understand better the role that the Congo plays, not just by supplying the resources, but the best way to really navigate this climate crisis together is by empowering people who have a proximity and who have a claim on the natural resources, in order for them to become better stakeholders of our next transition into the future in terms of climate change.
Thank you so much. It just reminds me how deeply our lives are intertwined. And that is part of where we are today as a community in Maine. And Luc, we are so deeply grateful for your wisdom and sharing. And I do just want to say there's so much to cover, so much more we could explore. Our next panel, we'll be talking more about the journey that people take firsthand. Those people come in different ways, but those who do make that path through South America and up to the border from Prince Pombo Mufumba. And then a lawyer, Jennifer Bailey, will be talking about the experience at the border. And then we're blessed to have Mufala Cheatham, the executive director of Maine Immigrants' Rights Coalition, who will be sharing about what people's experiences are right now as they're entering Maine. And I'd like to pass it back over to Kelly. Thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you, Luc.
Thank you, Reverend.
Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. You knew that was going to happen one time tonight. Thank you both to both of you for this wonderful, very informative evening. It's been great. Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us this evening. I will send everyone who registered for tonight's event a link to the recording of this program, as well as some other links that you can do some more research on this topic. And I would encourage you to share that recording far and wide to anybody that you think might benefit or might find it interesting. Our series, as Reverend Allison said, our series continues with part 2 in 2 weeks from tonight. That is a separate Zoom link, so you do need to register for that evening separately, and you will be sent the Zoom link after you register. Let's see, I think that covers it. I just want to remind you that the May 7th in-person event the location is going to be at the Congregational Church in Cumberland. So we're changing that location, and I'll send you information about that as well. My name is Kelly Greenlee. I'm the Community Outreach Librarian at Prince Memorial Library. I would love to hear from you if you have some feedback for me about tonight's event or about the series. Thanks for joining us this evening. Good night.